Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chairman Kevin O'Toole, Executive Director Rick Cotton, Vice Chair Jeff Linford. Questions? Larry.
First question is about the toll increase. It's sort of a hypothetical. What happens if the governors decide to veto the minutes? Technically, the Port Authority could continue with the toll increase since you've already approved the CPI process. So if that happens, the governors veto the minutes, what's the next move for the Port Authority?
I have been given every indication from what I've read in the newspapers that the governors are not intending to veto it. I'd be surprised if they did, and I don't want to speculate, Larry, but I think that it's a very solid, reasonable, rational plan that's been put out there, voted unanimously after 7 public hearings, and we're looking forward to moving forward with a very robust capital plan. Yes, sir, in the back.
For people who drive or take the train, don't pay attention to the minutia, but just hear the news today about why you're increasing everything. What do you tell them? Why is this so necessary now after years of holding the line?
Well, it's not just now. If you really go back, for those who pay attention today, as you just stated, there was a recitation of the history that started back in 2008 by the board that committed once there's a dollar increase with inflation taking its toll every year. This is 11 years ago. It set in motion in 08 this increase, or most of the increase you're seeing here today. And in 2011, you saw the board reaffirm that vote that once the inflation hits a certain marker, we have to have increases across the board. Having said all that, we have presented through the last several months, through 7 public hearings and a couple of hearings here, a very robust discussion about what this capital plan is and all the touch points that we're trying to improve, create, and make it a world-class facility, and all the infrastructures that the Port Authority is currently running or will run. And I think the case has been made rather broadly and rather boldly about what this money is to be used for. And I think the case was made today when you talk about the airports and you talk about the ports, you talk about the bridges and all of those areas that if you want a world-class facility and you want a safe facility, we have to pay for that.
I think the big picture here has 2 parts. The first is we recognize that any increase, every increase, is not popular. We recognize it is painful. We don't want to impose increases. In fact, we go to great extent to get most of our revenue from business partners, not from tolls, not from fares. And 2/3 of the Port Authority's revenues come from non-toll and non-fare sources. So we go to every possible extreme to avoid both toll and fare increases. But we must, on the other hand, support investment in what are aging legacy facilities. Our infrastructure facilities are simply subpar. They need to be improved. If we're going to get to 21st century infrastructure facilities, there must be funding. So we have tried with these increases to spread them over multiple facilities, over multiple users. We've tried to keep them largely consistent with inflation. There has not been an increase for more than 5 years of any kind, and what this funding is needed for is the 21st century infrastructure that this region deserves.
Yes, sir.
It's kind of a question. Coming from New York, took I think it was the Holland Tunnel, over. We didn't really hit potholes or anything like that. So when you talk about subpar assets, deteriorating assets, can you just provide a for instance of what they'll get for their money, for their additional money, and what is kind of the status of it, any kind of asset you want to use as an example?
Well, I'll use 2 as an example. 1, the airports, and 2, the bus terminal. Our airports come in last place in every customer survey that you will read. That's been the case for at least a decade, maybe longer. If you look at the bus terminal, I don't think there's a user of the bus terminal that doesn't believe that that terminal must be replaced. We are spending billions and billions and billions of dollars. We've committed at LaGuardia, at JFK, at Newark, to move those, to invest in those airports and move them to 21st century global standards. We have committed billions of dollars to replace and rebuild the bus terminal. There's no way to do that unless there is funding. It is an unpleasant truth. Infrastructure improvements require investment, and for decades we have underinvested across the board in our facilities.
Look at GW, look at the Helix, look at Terminal A. I don't think anybody would argue that they're not aging infrastructures that need dramatic change and dramatic restructuring from a safety standpoint.
And for clarity, you're talking about the capital work on those billions of dollars in investment you're talking about. So this extra money that you pay in tolls, you'll pay in the path, et cetera, that goes to capital needs? I just want a little clarity on that.
Well, the revenue that comes in goes to cover two things, which is the operating costs, but critically also the capital structure, the capital plans, the capital capacity. Our now $37 billion capital plan depends on adequate revenues to support that capital plan.
Yes, in the back.
We heard Senator Weinberg obviously indicate that NJ Transit essentially can't support the bus fare increase. Your response?
Yeah, we heard from Senator Weinberg. As a matter of fact, we hear from Senator Weinberg a lot, and we value her recommendation, her advice, and her comments, whether it's the bus terminal or other issues. We've taken very seriously what she and her staff have said as other elected officials on both sides of the river. Having said all that, we've put together comments from 1,400 other individuals, and we believe the plan that was unanimously passed today is a sound and reasonable one. Yes, sir.
I want to hammer this home, this point again one more time for folks that always wonder, where's my money going? What are the top 2 or 3 things you would tell the viewing public or the the folks across the tri-state where these new dollars are going to go toward in terms of your top priorities?
Well, these revenue sources, these increases, are going to support every single operating division of the Port Authority. That is the airports, it is the tunnels, bridges, and terminals, including with the leading point there, the bus terminal. It is going to support PATH, and it is going to support the port. And we are investing in all of those facilities. We are investing billions of dollars. We are committed to taking those facilities, which on the whole are subpar and inadequate by today's standards, and moving them to 21st century capabilities.
So it's best to phrase this as in money, pumping money into general upgrades as opposed to 2 or 3 key, high, hefty price tag projects? What's the
It is.
scenario you all want to?
Well, it is across the board. Half of the capital plan roughly goes to a state of good repair, so that, for example, we are putting $2 billion into the George Washington Bridge in terms of renovating it and maintaining it in a safe and sound capabilities. But it is across the board. In the spring, we committed to a major new improvement program for PATH. We have announced, in terms of the airports, we're putting $5 billion, including a new air train, which is part of the capital plan addition that the board just approved. We are building an entirely new LaGuardia airport while the airport is operating. We are committed to a transformation of JFK. So it is across the board. It is both, it just literally is every facility of the Port Authority.
Yes, Paul.
The Port Authority wants to spend about $4 billion building 2 new rail links to the airports. And one of the main goals of that is to help relieve congestion and get more people using mass transit. So how is increasing the air trains at Newark and JFK to 750, was it, or 750 or 775?
775.
How is that consistent with like mass transit goals, given that if there's 2 or 3 or 4 people traveling together, it's just not competitive with the price of, say, an Uber?
Well, the fact is it's very competitive with that price. Neither of those air train fares have been increased since they were started. 1953 and 2003 and 2005. I would defy you to find another fare or another price that remains the same since 2003 or 2005. If you can find one, it is very, very scarce. So those increases represent increased revenue associated with providing those services. They are one of many, but we are committed both to a new air train at LaGuardia, a brand new air train at Newark, and improving the JFK air train. And that is part of a bigger picture. We are completely committed to rail mass transit links to every one of our airports. Right now, LaGuardia is the only major East Coast airport that has no rail mass transit link. We are committed to improving that. And we need some degree of contribution from the fare box. And this represents largely inflation-based adjustments of those fares to take account of the fact that the last increase was 15 to 18 years ago.
In the back.
The new toll plan eliminates the carpool discount because you say it's too hard to monitor. Shouldn't you be finding a way to make the carpool work in this day and age, or rather than simply canceling it?
Well, the current carpool discount was eliminated at the Staten Island bridges at the time that they moved to cashless tolling. And there are two pieces in terms of the difficulty with the carpool discount. Number one, as we move to cashless and we take the toll collectors away, there is currently no way to monitor whether in fact a car qualifies. The second is we are experiencing serious safety issues at the George Washington Bridge primarily, but other places as well, where cars will try to meet up on the roadway with riders in order to qualify. And finally, the carpool discount is currently used by approximately 3% of the current tolls that are paid. So when you put all those three together, we can't afford to continue the safety problems. We don't have a mechanism to implement the carpools day to day, and it is lightly used. That's led to the discontinuance. But it's part of a bigger picture, which is the Port Authority is the first public transportation agency to embrace the Paris Climate Accords, and we have taken and are taking and will take multiple measures to reduce our emissions both of greenhouse gases and of pollutants, and we're completely committed to a sustainability and environmental imperative.
Do you know if it works anywhere else? Any other country has this carpool system that works?
Well, we have literally looked across the country in terms of whether there is a technology that can effectively identify whether a car has more than the carpool number of individuals in the car, and we simply have not found a reliable one.
Next question. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.